You know, we spend so much time looking at the big picture of history, the massive invasions, the big treaties, all of that.
hmm The generals pointing at maps.
Exactly. But sometimes the most incredible stories are, I mean, they're hidden in the tiniest details. I was looking at this chart of military ribbons,
Oh, yeah, just the walls of color.
just rows and rows of them. And I zoomed in on this one little device. It's this tiny piece of bronze, barely a quarter-inch tall, and it's just the letter A.
It is so easy to miss.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not looking for it, I mean, it just looks like a speck on the ribbon.
Yeah.
But that tiny letter is, well, it's one of the most fascinating little quirks in all of military regulations.
That's what totally hooked me, because this isn't just some, good job sticker. This one letter connects two completely different worlds.
Worlds that shouldn't really coexist, yeah.
On one hand, you've got this secret, undeclared shooting war against U-boats in the North Atlantic in 1941. And on the other, you have, modern-day Space Force guardians watching satellites from a base in Greenland.
It's a bridge, really. A bridge between this kinetic industrial warfare of World War II and the silent digital vigilance of the 21st century.
And the thing that separates them, the code that tells you which story you're looking at, is a font choice.
It's a fun choice. A serif.
We're literally going to do a deep dive about serifs today.
We have to, because on a military uniform, a serif isn't just decoration. It's a timeline. It's a whole story.
So, okay, that's the mission for this deep dive.
Right.
We are unpacking the A device. We're looking at the source material, the Wikipedia entry, but we're trying to figure out the why. Why did this thing just vanish for 60 years, and why does a tiny bronze letter represent such a gray area of warfare?
It really is a story about that gray zone.
Mm-hmm.
The A device, in both its forms, is for situations that aren't quite normal peace, but they're not fully declared war either. Or at least they weren't at the time.
Okay, so let's start with the object itself. If I'm holding this thing in my hand, what am I actually looking at?
You're holding a miniature bronze letter A, about a quarter-inch high. It's made to be pinned right onto a service ribbon.
Yeah.
But like you said, there are two versions, and you really have to look close right at the feet of the letter.
The feet. You mean the serifs.
Exactly, the serifs. The original version, let's call it the 1941 model, is a sans-serif A. It's blocky, clean, no frills.
It looks like the font you'd see stenciled on an ammo crate or something.
Yeah.
Very utilitarian.
Precisely. That is the Atlantic device.
Yeah.
Then you had the modern one, the Arctic device, and that one uses a serif font. It's got those little decorative lines at the bottom, a little more formal, a bit more, Times New Roman, maybe.
So to break it down, sans-serif, no feet, equals Atlantic, fighting U-boats.
Right.
Serif with feet equals Arctic, freezing in Greenland.
That's the visual code. And that sans-serif version, it's basically a fossil. You can't earn it anymore. It belongs purely to history.
So let's go back to that history. Because the Atlantic device, it covers a very, very specific window of time. The sources say June 22, 1941 to December 7th, 1941.
And everyone knows December 7th.
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. The day the talking stopped, and the U.S. was officially, formally at war. But this A device, it's for the 6 months before that.
This is the part that I find so gripping. We always think of World War II for America, starting with the bombs falling on Hawaii. But if you were in the Navy in, say, October of 41, the war had already started for you.
It was an undeclared war. That's the term for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to remember the context of 1941. Europe's on fire. Britain is just hanging on. The Battle of the Atlantic is raging. German U-boats are sinking ships left and right. And officially, the United States is neutral.
Neutral, in quotes, yeah. We were running convoys.
We were doing a lot more than that. We were escorting them. FDR had given orders that basically amounted to shoot on sight if a U-boat threatened those supply lines.
Just try to imagine that. You're a sailor on a destroyer in the North Atlantic. The waves are 30 feet high. The water is ice cold. And you're hunting for submarines that are actively hunting you. But when you write home, you can't say, I'm in a war, because, well, Congress hasn't declared one yet.
That is the exact psychological space this device lived in. It was authorized for the American Defense Service Medal. Now, that medal was for pretty much everyone serving during that emergency period. But the A device, originally they called it the Axis device. That was special.
And it was only for certain branches, right?
Only for the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. The Army didn't get this.
So if you're a private peeling potatoes at Fort Dix, you get the medal, but no A.
No A. The A was specifically for those who were on vessels out in the Atlantic engaged in armed conflict or even potential armed conflict with the German Kriegsmarine.
That phrase, potential armed conflict, that carries so much weight. It's an admission that just being out there was combat.
And people died. That's the thing to remember. The USS Reuben James was sunk by a torpedo in October 41. Over 100 American sailors died.
Weeks before Pearl Harbor.
Weeks. Those men were fighting and dying in a war that, on paper, didn't exist yet.
So when you see that blocky sans-serif A on an old uniform, it's telling you a story. It's saying, I was there when the rules were blurry. I was on the front line before there was a front line.
Here's a huge badge of honor. It separated the people who were actually in the line of fire from everyone else who was just part of the buildup. It meant you faced the U-boat threat head on.
And then, after December 7th, it just stops.
It becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once war is declared, you start getting campaign medals. The European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, for example. The need for a special, we were fighting before the war started, badge it evaporated. Because now everyone was fighting.
So the A just falls off the map. We go through the rest of World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the entire Cold War, Desert Storm, and nothing. The letter A is just gone.
Done for 60 years, which, it makes sense. The specific circumstances, this weird mix of official neutrality and actual naval combat, just didn't happen again in the same way.
Until the Air Force decided to bring it back, and they completely rebranded it.
It was a really fascinating move. On February 10, 2002, the Air Force brings back the A device. But this time, it has serifs.
The little feet.
The little feet. And A no longer stands for Atlantic or Axis. It stands for Arctic.
That shift right there says so much about changing military priorities. We go from hunting submarines to surviving the cold.
Well, think about the timing. 2002, the world is laser-focused on the Middle East. The war on terror is kicking off. But the military still has these incredibly critical outposts in the far north. They're vital for missile defense, satellite tracking.
Right, and the people stationed there aren't in combat, not in the traditional sense, but they are enduring something else entirely.
Extreme hardship, isolation, darkness, cold. The Arctic K is attached to the Air Force Overseas Ribbon for a short tour.
Okay, so let's get into where you have to go to earn this serif A, because this is where the bureaucracy gets just wild. I would assume it's just, go somewhere north. If you're stationed where it's brutally cold, you get the ribbon.
That would be the logical assumption. And it immediately makes you think of Alaska. We have huge bases there. Eielson, Elmendorf, Richardson.
And it gets cold there. I mean, if you're a mechanic working on a flight line in Fairbanks when it's 40 below zero, you've earned an Arctic device.
You would think so. But you get nothing. At least not the A device.
Wait, what? Why not? That seems completely wrong.
It all comes down to a line on a map. Cartography. The rule is that you have to serve your tour of duty north of the Arctic Circle.
The line at 66 degrees, 33 minutes north.
That's the one.
But a huge part of Alaska is north of that line.
Geographically, you're right. It is. But here's the catch. The U.S. military has no, and I mean no, active permanent bases in that part of Alaska.
No way.
The big bases, the ones we mentioned, are all just south of the circle. We have some radar sites, temporary spots, but no permanent garrison where you'd be stationed for a full tour.
That is the most incredible technicality I've ever heard. Sorry, Airman, you're only at 64 degrees north. No A for you.
It creates this bizarre Alaska exception. You're living and working in an Arctic environment, but administratively, you're not Arctic enough to qualify.
Okay, so if Alaska's out, where is left? There's not a lot of American territory left up there.
We are out of American territory. As of 2007, there is only one place on the entire planet where an American service member can earn this device.
One base.
One single base. Pituffik Space Base.
Which used to be Sewell Air Base.
Correct. It's in the far northwest of Greenland. It is 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle.
Okay, now that is seriously north.
It's profound isolation. We're talking months of 24-hour darkness in winter, 24-hour sunlight in summer. It's locked in by sea ice for most of the year. The nearest town is, well, there isn't one really.
And who is stationed there now?
It's mostly Space Force personnel, Guardians. They're tracking satellites, monitoring for ballistic missile launches. It's our northernmost sensor.
I just love that image. In 1941, the A is worn by a guy on the pitching deck of a ship, looking through binoculars for a periscope. In 2024, it's worn by a Guardian looking at a glowing screen, tracking an object in orbit.
But the thread that connects them is vigilance, constant watchfulness. In 41, if they failed, a convoy full of supplies and people died. Today, if Pituffik fails, we lose our early warning for a potential nuclear attack. The stakes are just as high.
It really changes how you see that ribbon. It's not a combat award, no. But it is an award for a different kind of sacrifice, the sacrifice of being posted to the literal edge of the world.
And that's why the rules are so specific. The military doesn't like to hand out unique devices like this unless they mean something very, very specific. That Serif A means one thing. I was at Pituffik.
Okay, speaking of rules, let's talk about the oak leaf puzzle. Because military ribbons are a language, how does the A fit into the sentence if there are other words?
Right, because you can earn that overseas short tour ribbon more than once. So let's say you do a tour in Korea, then another one in Turkey, and then you get sent to Greenland.
Okay, so I get the ribbon for my first tour in Korea. Then I get an oak leaf cluster for the tour in Turkey to show ×2. And then I go to Greenland.
Exactly. So now your ribbon has an oak leaf on it, and you've earned the A. The regulation is very clear. The A device is worn to the wearer's right of any oak leaf clusters.
The wearer's right. Okay, I always have to picture this. If I'm wearing the uniform and looking down.
It's closest to your left shoulder, closest to your heart. If I'm looking at you, the A will appear on the left side of the oak leaves.
It seems like such a tiny detail, but I bet if you get that wrong on inspection day.
Oh, you will hear about it.
Oh.
Uniform standards are everything. And the placement matters because it gives the A priority. It says this is unique qualification, separate from just the number of tours you've done.
And can you get more than one? If I'm a glutton for punishment and I go back to Pituffik for a second tour?
Nope. One and done. It's like a switch. You've either served in the Arctic or you haven't. Only one A device per ribbon.
It's just so interesting that we have these two bookends, the Atlantic A and the Arctic A. One was born from a desperate need to recognize combat during a so-called peace, and the other was brought back to recognize extreme hardship during a time of remote technological warfare.
And notice the common ground. They're both fundamentally about sea power and air power, or now space power. The Army doesn't really have an equivalent in this lineage. It's a tradition for the services that operate on the fringes, the high seas and the high north.
I do want to circle back to that Alaska anomaly for a second. The fact that we don't have a single qualifying base there, it feels like more than just a piece of trivia. It feels like it points to a gap in our strategic thinking.
It definitely raises some questions.
Yeah.
We talk constantly about the Arctic as this new strategic frontier. You hear about melting ice, new shipping lanes, great power competition with Russia and China up there.
Exactly. We talk a big game about the Arctic.
But our actual physical footprint of permanent bases inside the circle on our own soil is, well, it's non-existent.
Yeah.
We're relying on Greenland, which is Danish territory, for that crucial northern post.
It just makes you wonder if that's a sustainable strategy, or if, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to see a new base built in northern Alaska, and suddenly thousands of airmen and guardians will qualify for that Serif A.
It could happen. But it just goes to show you that a line on a map isn't just geography, it's policy, it's politics. And that line dictates the recognition and the careers of thousands of people.
It's a great reminder to always read the fine print. Next time you see a veteran's uniform, look at the details. If you happen to see that little A, look at its feet.
If it has no feet, you're looking at a very old, very rare story about the undeclared war against the U-boats. If it has feet, you're looking at someone who survived the long, cold night in Greenland.
And both of those are stories worth knowing. Thanks for helping us decode the alphabet today.
Anytime. It was fun.
And for everyone listening, keep looking closely. There is always more to the story. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.